think we're live here. I'm still getting used to this Yolobox setup. So I don't like how I cannot see how many people are here with the Yolobox setup. So I don't know if anybody is going to be here. This is kind of I wouldn't say a proof of concept, but it's a test to me. Let me check my audio real quick. Make sure I've got that at least. Oh yeah, there's a bit of a delay, but I think that's being taken care of on the other side. So this is kind of a proof of concept to me where, bear with me just a second. Let me get the comments pulled up. There we go. So my wife and I have 3 young kids, and so this is pretty late at night, and really my my thought about this is, if I could have an audience and do these kind of late night live streams, then that may be good and easier for me to accommodate than doing streams in the middle of the day. So we're going to talk about some things tonight. We're going to do some unboxing. So I bought this recently from Costco, of all places, and so we'll take a look at that. And as far as cameras go, you know, the elephant in the room right now is that Sony is going to be announcing the Alpha 1 in this week, like a couple days or so, I think on the 20th, maybe 19th, something like that. So the old A1 is a camera that I am very familiar with. I spent a lot of time with the A1. It was my primary camera for shooting real estate for a couple years. And I believe, in my opinion, that the A1 is still probably the most advanced, best, all-around, full-frame camera ever created by anybody, period. And there's really a lot to that. A couple of the things that the A1 has that is better than everyone else still, it has a stacked 50 megapixel sensor that is extraordinarily fast reading, faster reading than everything except, I believe, their own A9 III, which has that, the new global shutter. The A1 has a 1/400th maximum flash sync with their mechanical shutter, or their electronic first curtain mechanical shutter, 1/400th of a second flash sync. So for what I do using lights, that's really handy when you're looking at other flagship cameras are typically 1/200th, 1/250th. And so you're getting nearly a whole nother stop of ambient light control when you're using strobes. And I know that that's not, that to some people, that to the masses actually is kind of an esoteric feature because unless you work with lights, you don't really understand how big that is, but it really is. It's a big deal, that 1/400 flash sync. So, it's things like that. The autofocus is still bonkers. It does, I think, 30 frames per second, 50 megapixel raw, so... you can take any one of these categories and you can say, well, the Z9 does this better, or the R3, now R1 does this better. But there's no camera that does them all better than the A1. And so as the chatter has come out and as the anticipation of this comes on and the rumors are getting fed and such about the specs, perhaps it being not that different of a camera, which is what it looks like it's going to be shaping up to be, isn't a bad thing, because Sony's playing from ahead. If they were playing from behind, okay, if they were like a Nikon or a Fuji or a Panasonic or somebody like that, it's basically anybody other than Canon, right? Because we all know that's the main competition to Sony and Canon these days for the full-frame interchangeable lens camera market. If they were any of those other companies, they'd have to throw the kitchen sink at the thing. But Sony's playing from ahead. They're playing from ahead, and they're still selling sensors to everybody. So I think they can they can choose to do what they're going to do. King Croc, good to see you, bud. Maybe Sony surprises us with the A2 too? I don't know. We shall see. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I saw that there may be another camera, not just the A1 Mark II, but there allegedly could be another camera released or announced, I should say. I keep saying released, but announced with the A1 too. Now, what's interesting, okay, and I want to get into kind of how this plays out with the other flagships they're about. And I think, King Crook, you have a Z9 or a Z8, I think, and I think you like it a lot, and you should. It looks like an awesome camera. So that now, the Z9 makes, of the big three, Sony, Canon, Nikon, makes the Z9 now the oldest design, which is crazy to think about because the Z9 still, it seems like such a modern camera, and it is, but it now is the oldest design, right, out of the three. The Z8, and I've gone over this plenty of times before, I don't see the Z8 as a different camera than the Z9. And in fact, it made me a bit concerned about the direction of Nikon when they took 2 years basically to strip down the Z9 to a lower price point. Instead of doing something innovative like Canon rather did with the R5C, or something innovative like Sony did with the global shutter A9 III. They took 2 years to strip down Z9 to Z8. I love Nikon, and I started to take photography seriously before I became a full-time professional photographer. I started to take photography seriously with a Nikon crop body. And I love Nikon, and I want to see them succeed. But I am a little bit concerned about Nikon. We'll see how the red thing turns out with them and such, right? But I wanted to talk about the other flagship, so the other elephant in the room that really needs discussion here is the Canon R1. And what's interesting here is just like a day ago, I want to say, the Petapixel guys Chris and Jordan did a review of the Canon R1. And the Canon R1 has been around and in the hands of photographers at the Olympics, which was many months ago now, right? In the hands of photographers at the Olympics. And so these have been around. And it got me to thinking, okay, well, why are Chris and Jordan doing a review of the R1 right now? And you know why I think that is? I think it's because Chris and Jordan and the Petapixel crew are obviously on Sony's list, right? So Chris and Jordan, I have zeroed out, or at least have had a chance to handle the A1 Mark II. They know what this camera is. They know what it feels like. They know what the capabilities are. They've already created content on it. They're waiting for that embargo date to drop that. And so what they're doing is they're getting ahead of that right now by setting the stage and saying, okay, here's the best from Canon. Here's their R1. That way next week or this week or whenever it is, they can drop their embargo video and say, hey, and here's the A1 Mark II. So now they have a competing flagship videos, and one of them can drive traffic to the other, and I think that's great. I'm not saying there's anything bad with that, but it's curious how they decided now, after the R1 has been a very known quantity for many months, to release that Canon R1 review video. So, speaking of the Canon R1, the R1 is, so my daily driver is an R3, and the R1 is an R3. It does some things better. It does other things, strangely, a little bit worse. So it has the back screen on the R1 is like almost half the resolution as that on the R3, which is strange, right? The R1, so the port covers on the R1. Here's my R3. Let me go to my overhead cam here. Let's see. So here's the R3, and one of the things that I hate about all of these camera companies is when they have these port covers be flappy. I call them full flappy, right? Like I like the R3 because you can have the door right here and it's actually kind of a little hinge, right? And you can seal it up and everything and it's good. So the R1, this goes full flappy. It goes kind of like the R5 and the R5C where it goes like all the way up like this. And then if you're running a cage or like a an L bracket or anything, like I have cages on like most of my cameras, that's a little bit harder to to move and stuff. It's already kind of finicky doing it like this, right? But trying to get to these ports and then put the flap back and now you're hey, do I tuck the flap in here, like whatever? That's not really the easiest thing to do all the time with these, right? And so the R3's got a better design. It's got the door on it and it still seals. And so why did they put the full flappy, covers on the R1? I have no idea why they. I have no idea why they made the screen worse on the R1. But other than that, they're the same resolution. They are. They say the R1 is faster, but the R3 is so fast, with the read speed and everything. Like, all right, it's a strange camera to call a flagship from Canon because it is so like their next most recent flagship, the R3, which leads kind of credit to the theory that the R3 was going to be the R1, and then Sony came out with the A1 and they called it R3 instead of R1. So I get that and totally get it. King Kruk, C-Cam Z8 AMB Monstro. Oh, you got two Monstros? I will upgrade to new Reds after RF mount. After RF mount? Oh, you're talking about when Nikon puts a Z mount on it? It makes sense they would. It'll be interesting to see, because the design language of all these cameras in recent years has certainly been to have image quality encroaching on traditional cinema cameras like the Red Monstros and such, but be doing it in a smaller, lighter, more compact form factor, and the technology has allowed that to advance a lot. And there certainly is a difference, right, as you know, between a Red DSMC2 body image. I still kick myself for selling my Dragon X, and any of these mirrorless cameras, from Nikon or anyone else. But now that Nikon owns Red, and Nikon is their obvious focus, right? And that tech is going to come. It'll be interesting for me to see, really a couple things. It'll be interesting for me to see with Nikon, the sensor tech. Now, I know that Sony produces sensors for Nikon, but it's my understanding when Sony produces sensors for all these other brands that those brands are still engineering their sensors, right? So they're engineering their sensors, and then Sony is producing the sensor based on the blueprints that the respective companies' engineers have given Sony to produce that sensor. That's how I believe it works the majority of the time. And so you get strange things like Nikon's half-stacked Z6 thing, So it'll be interesting because when I think of Red cameras, I'm really thinking of a sensor company more than anything. I'm thinking about like the Monstros. Here's a 16-bit high frame rate VistaVision baller, sensor. And then the rest of the camera around it is, it's a pretty basic Cinecam, with the rest of the camera around it. And same thing with, especially like all the global shutter stuff they're doing now, right? The Komodo, the KX, and the Raptor X. These are high dynamic range, high frame rate, global shutter sensors. And I'm not sure Sony can do that, even though Sony can produce them by the bazillions, and they may be producing Red sensors for them, I don't know. But that is Red tech through and through. with those sensor designs. And now that Nikon owns it, it's going to be so my point is, I don't know if RedCam's going to get a Z mount, or if they're going to keep Red like it is pretty much, and just kind of milk all the tech for their existing Z mount cams. Are the newer Nikon cameras going to have Red tech, not the newer Red cameras have Nikon mount? I don't know. We'll see. Hey, Alan, as a Sony user, I'm intrigued by the C70. You told me this a couple weeks ago that you were thinking about getting a C70. I've had a C70. Not for a long time. I had it for a few weeks. It was Carlos's. Carlos and I have traded back and forth R5Cs and C70s for a couple rounds. And it went back to him most recently, so he has that one back now. I really enjoyed it, but I would say when you're talking about outright image quality, let me unplug these headphones here so I won't have that echo. When you're talking about outright image quality, you can't, in my experience, beat Red cameras. Now, I know that Ari has that tier, the Ari tier. I haven't used an Ari camera, so it's not within my experience. But within my experience, and I do have experience with just about everything else than an Ari, I believe, you can't beat Red image quality. A very close second to that, a shockingly close second to that, is Blackmagic. C70 is the fastest working general video camera that I've ever had, in that it doesn't do anything wrong. Having said that, it looks like a Canon camera, and that's not a bad thing, but it's no Red and it's no Blackmagic, right? It looks like a Canon camera. It has gobs of dynamic range, and so that's good. It shoots C-Log 2 native in 10-bit, and it shoots C-Log 2 native in 12-bit RAW, right? All that's good. Canon's RAW codec stinks. It always has. It will bring good, powerful computers to its knees. The C70 actually is not that heavy, the RAW codec, because it's like a RAW light or something like that, and the data rate isn't really, it has to write it to SD cards, so it's not really super heavy like the RAW codecs in like the R5C, for example. That's a heavy codec, that 8K RAW. But it's 12-bit in a C-Log 2 in the C70, and it's got gobs of dynamic range, and it's a really, really fast working camera because it has autofocus that's good. With the more recent updates, now it has tracking autofocus. I don't think it always did, but it does now. It has the NDs that have enough stops of ND on tap that you can shoot wide open outside. And I know that, like, the Sony, for instance, the FX6 has that really cool electronic ND, but I know one of the criticisms of the Sony system is that it only goes to like 7 stops or something like that. So if you have a fast lens, you can't shoot it wide open outside. You're still going to be overexposed. So, the Canon, it's a really fast system. Oh, the audio is rad too on the C70. One of the things that I was surprised by, but pleasantly surprised by, is I could, by using a camera-mounted shotgun mic on the C70 and setting the preamp in the camera to auto level, shoot a real estate intro with an agent without having them wear a lav mic. I could just have the camera-mounted shotgun auto level, right? So I'm not even setting levels, and would think it's kind of risky because it's not recording like 32-bit float or anything. I think it's 24-bit in there. And then a combination of that and a dialogue isolate tool, which is like super easy nowadays in Premiere, I could get audio that you would swear was from a lav. And so what's cool about that is, again, like the fast working part of the C70, right? If you can do that and you can trust that the audio level's going to get it right like 99% of the time, and it will, and then quickly just run it through a dialogue isolate denoise algorithm in Premiere Pro, and you're off to the races. You didn't have to, here's your pack, here's how you turn it on, and you put it in the belt, and then, I want you to feed this up through your shirt and all that. Of course, that's the better way to do it, but it's not the faster way to do it, right? Let's see. King Kruk, monster images especially, it really is, yeah. I use Z8 for some macro stuff, and also B-roll doesn't get as much attention as walking around with a Ranger monster. I know. Dragon X skin tones are special. The Dragon X is like, I've never used a Monstra, so, but I know that of those 4 sensors, right? The Dragon X, the Gemini, the Helium, and the Monstro. It seems like the Monstro and the Dragon X are the ones that people wish they still had. I think Gemini with its dual base, and it was a different aspect ratio. It was like a tall aspect ratio in the Gemini. It I think was kind of the outlier in all of them, in that it had its own look and it looked great, but it didn't look like the other 3. The other 3 kind of looked like each other. The Gemini didn't look like the other 3. And then the Helium, you've got a Super 35 sensor. The sensor's even smaller than Dragon X. Dragon X is a big Super 35 sensor. Helium was a smaller sensor with more resolution, which also meant it was a lot noisier. And so, it really does seem like the sweet spots. Like, Dragon X is a real sweet spot in that lineup because it was the most affordable one, too. Now, granted, it was still like 20 grand. That's back when Reds cost that much. And, hope you don't want to handle. You better sit down before you get told what one of those costs. So... Live music, love my C70, but way too soft. Yeah, C70 it certainly is soft, and I think I don't want to say that's overblown, but there is certainly something to be said for the C70's reputation of being soft. I think at least somewhat attributed to people using it almost exclusively speed boosted with EF class, right? And so, obviously, in the Canon, 7.1 focal reducers, it's fine. It's a good speed booster, but there's no free lunch. And so you're going to reduce sharpness a little bit through that. And then the older EF class, you're going to reduce sharpness a little bit more from, say, like the RF class. And again, I'm not giving the C70 like a total free pass because you're right, it is soft. But I think a lot of the whole C70 is soft thing, that has become a thing out there is because so many users are using it speed boosted with those older lenses. And so that, with a camera that already tends to be a bit soft, doesn't do it any favors. But I found that, if you use it with really sharp, like RF glass, and you punch it with some contrast and some saturation in post, nip the blacks, things like that. You just kind of make it a little crunchier in the grade. Then it is like, I did a project with a Komodo X. Yeah, it was the KX and a C70. And I did all of the shots with people because that was one day of shooting. I had all the people there. This was for like a luxury bed and breakfast wine Napa kind of thing, right? So we're doing like a lifestyle kind of thing. So all the shots that I had with people, so the people, sitting around the table, people with a sommelier, people by the pool, all that kind of stuff, we did on KX. And then I shot on a different day because that was a full day shooting that. I shot on a different day the interiors portion of the interiors tour, and I did that on a C70. And I cut them together like you wouldn't know which shot is which had I not told you that the people were shot on this camera and the interiors were shot on this other camera. So yeah, it's soft. It really it depends on what lenses you have. It depends on what you're comparing it against. It's like if you take a look at like the R5C, which is my overhead cam tonight. R5C is brutally sharp. It's got that oversampled 8K sensor going. I mean, it is really, it's so sharp that people try to like jack it up, by, booger filters and stuff, right? So it depends, like, but I'm with you. I love the C72, man. We are years beyond needing to upgrade to please clients if shooting standard corporate real estate, et cetera, et cetera. From then, it's just pros talking shop. You're right, man. And that's something that, like my buddy Carlos, Carlos Quintero, like he made a video a while back basically saying that too. Like, you know what? If you have a camera, anything in the past like 5 years or so is so far outpaces what the delivery platforms are doing with the content anyway. And he brought up a point where broadcast in this country isn't even at 1080. Right, like cable channels and stuff, they're at like 780i or something like that, right? And so we have these 4K. We live in a world where like these tiny little cameras, like this thing that I was gonna unbox today, right? This thing shoots 4K, and and I can wave it around, and you can't even resolve that on your typical network broadcast because they're just not doing it. So yeah, totally. It's pros talking shop, but the other side of that I think is also true is that when you talk about like red cameras, or like I said, I really like Blackmagic cameras too. Blackmagic camera I'm shooting now. Red cameras, Blackmagic cameras. There's like a sauce there. There's a sauce there that I'm convinced clients can still see that. If you have a red camera versus like a Sony FX3 or something like that, I think clients can still see that. Maybe not. Maybe that's just pros talking shop again, right? I'm good with that. I like talking shop. I want DSMC3 with removable mounts like DSMC2. Yeah, I know XL has that, but I prefer that. Than a fixed RF. We can get LPO mount would be icing. I know XL has that. The Raptor XL, does it have a removable mount? I didn't know that. I thought they were all fixed RF mounts on the DSMC3. What I think is cool is Sony on, I think the Burano is like this too, but on the Venice it's a native EF. Well, it's a dual native, so it's a native EF, and then they have a PL, or not EF, Sony E mount, right? And then they have a PL that's also dual, and so it kind of like fits together, right? So it fits together like one piece on the camera as a PL, and then if you want to use the Sony E mount glass, for autofocus, you take the PL part off of there, and but I think they're like both locking, right? The EF mount's locking, the PL mount's locking, but they're like dual native and like they fit together somehow on the Venice. And like I said, I think the Burano is like that too. And that's a neat way to skin that cat. See, so you know what, Sony has usually the best design ideas like that. They've got that dual native mount, totally useful, right? I mean that is the right way to do that. They have that cool electronic ND. Totally right way to do that. That is so much better than hard stop NDs where, stuff can, with the motorized ones, they can break. And there's all kinds of stuff that can happen with motorized NDs. Now, the electronic one, that's rad, right? Sony has in their mirrorless cameras dual symmetrical fast media in the CFX-A cards. Yes, I get it. They're not as fast as CFX-B cards, but they're getting generationally faster, just like all this media is, right? So the next, I think the 4.0 CFX-A, the new generation of CFX-A is as fast as the current generation, or I should say outgoing generation now, of CFX-B, right? And so, but in the meantime, they're smaller, right? You can get two of them in there symmetrically. They don't heat up like CFX-Bs do. You can hammer. Like when I was doing a lot of work on the A7S III, you can write to those CFX-A cards for as long as you want. You take them out and they're still cool to the touch, you know, whereas any CFX-B cards, they get hot. And so that's, I think, part of the reason, other than the size, that a lot of these manufacturers don't do dual CFX-B, because that generates a lot of heat. And the CFX-A, for whatever reason, just the way that they work, you know, because even if you're not writing like huge frame rates, the CFX-Bs, they still get hotter than a similar frame rate, a similar data rate being written to the smaller CFX-A. So, you know, but Sony, man, you know, they do it in the mount, they do it in the ND, they do it in the cards. You know, now they have the Bronto that's got the ND and the IBIS on board all at once. So, I mean, they're the market leader, man, for good reason. They really are. Let's see, LPL mount, be icing. Canon with the C400 has a cool PL mount. Yeah, I don't know a ton about the C400. I mean, I take that back. Like I think I understand what the C400 is. And I think for me, that's probably not the right camera for me. And here's really the reason why, right? I've got an R5C and I have an R3. Everything that I've seen from the C400 and the C80 looks a lot like an R5C and an R3. And I get it. Like, there are some advantages to the C400. You've got the triple base ISO. That's rad. I don't really ever use, like, I had an A7S III for years, and I didn't like the 12,800 base. You know, I know everybody says, like, oh, it sees in the dark and this and that. It's like, it is so smeary, dude. The 12,800 base ISO on the Sony FX cameras is getting hammered with noise reduction. It's getting hammered with noise reduction. There's a color shift there where like everything gets a little bit warmer, you know, but it just looks like a plasticky, too warm kind of mess, you know. So I didn't really use it. You know, but people love it, right? It's 12, it sees in the dark. It's like, you know, I'd rather not shoot in the dark, but you know, if you're doing it, then cool. So that the R5C has a dual base at 800 and 3200. I use the 3200 on the R5C all the time, and it's a great dual base. You know, the 3200 is, I mean, it's really clean on the R5C, and I think that the R5C oversamples the image from 8K, really descales a lot of that noise anyway, right? So you can go to the 3200. It doesn't have to interject so much smeary noise reduction like the Sony cams do, because the Sony cams are coming from a much lower base resolution than like the R5C. But anyway, I don't know if the C400 is for me, because it seems to me like I already own that image, right? It looks, when I see the footage, it looks a lot like an R5C. It looks a lot like an R3. So for that reason, it's like, I think I already own that image. And if I already own that image, why would I spend, what are these things, like $8,000 or something like that? If I were to spend $8,000 on a camera right now, I'd probably buy another KX. You know, I sold my KX earlier this year, but for $8,000, which is what they are now, like $7,000, $8,000, whatever it is, I feel like getting a KX would give me a different tool. It'll give me a different look, right? Whereas if I were to spend that money on a C400, that's a look I already own. I don't have to spend the $8,000 or whatever for it. Real Steel, hey, you finally made it, brother. See, now this is kind of more your speed here, because you're in like, or are you in like Korea or somewhere, Vietnam, right? And so it's, what is it, like 10 in the morning there or something. So this might be good for you doing something like this that's late. Everything these days is light years beyond my delivery requirements. Yeah, we were just talking about that. But I'll be damned if I still don't love the shop talk. But for me these days, it's all about the incremental ergonomic upgrades, exactly. And that's why, for me, the R1 to the R3 is kind of a miss, because I don't know if there are any ergonomic upgrades. unless you want to do the eyeball tracking thing, which allegedly works now, the viewfinder that tracks the eyes in the R1 versus the R3. But so when I tried it in the R, and here's what's funny, and here's what's consistent too with my experience with the R3 and like everybody else that I've ever known who had an R3 is we all tried to set up the eyeball tracking thing. It didn't work that great. And we all went, and never used it again. And that was my experience with it, calibrated it, because you calibrate it, look this way, look that way, all that. And then it almost works. And so for me, what the problem was with it was, so I'm shooting real estate. And I know people always think that's silly, right? So you use an R3 to shoot real estate? I mean, how fast are those houses moving kind of thing. And it's, no, I mean, there are reasons that I do shoot it for real estate. But with Canon especially, and I find that Sony is different in this way, but with Canon especially, when it comes to exposure metering, and so I shoot interiors and my composites fully manual, manual focus, manual exposure, I'm controlling all the values because I'm doing like brackets and using strobes and stuff like that. For the exteriors, I'm almost always shooting on aperture priority with autofocus. And that's how I can just blow through exteriors quickly, because shooting real estate is really about workflow more than almost anything else. So with the Canon cameras, they have different ways that you can meter exposure, just like all cameras do, right? You can do center weighted, you can do focus point, you can do evaluative, and all that. But regardless of what choice you make with Canon cameras, it is still going to weight that in some way on where your focus point is selected. And so when you have a system like the eyeball tracking thing in the R3 that kind of works, right? And you're shooting a very dynamic scene where, let's say you have a side of a house that's being shadowed by trees. There's a big tree by it and it's really in shadow. And then you have a very bright scene like right now. So you got a huge amount of dynamic range in one frame, right? You got shadows right there and you got bright right there. And so I need to be able to select, to put that focus point somewhere very specific. So I can then, using my eyes and then using the histogram, know that I'm capturing all that. And when you have a system like the R3's eyeball thing, which kind of works, but maybe not really, it's not specific enough. Like it's not granular enough for me to say, I wanted to put it on that post because that post is kind of like middle gray, whereas I don't want it over here because that's way too bright and, all of my shadows I'm going to lose. I don't want it over in these shadows because all my highlights are going to be blown to oblivion, right? So I want to put it right on that post. And the eyeball tracking thing is not good enough for that. Now, if we're talking about athletes that are playing a ball sport, or we're talking about auto racing, things like that, it might work for that, because, things are going by and you look at something and it knows what you want and it, and the guy on a motorcycle, it's going to get that. But for my uses, it doesn't really work that well. They say the R1's better for that, but who knows? For 10K, I'm going for KX, yeah. And I would invest in PL glass, much better than using photography lenses. I think it depends on if you want to use the autofocus or not. So, I mean, I don't disagree, but I've kind of gone down the EF route. EF still adapts to everything too, and you can find most cinema glass that is, anything except for ones that I would never buy anyway, because they're like 20, 30 grand a piece. They have EF mount options, and EF natively works on a lot of cameras that I'd be interested in, and it's easily adapted to most of the other ones. So, that's kind of what I go for. But yeah, you got the interesting systems like the DJI LiDAR focus thing nowadays too, which could make PL options more attractive for autofocus. But I've heard a lot of mixed things about the DJI thing though. Some people it works good for, some people it doesn't. Hey, let's unbox this thing. So I got this. I've been hearing about these for a while, right? The Osmo Pocket 3. Excuse me. I've seen them before. Never really played with one yet, but I saw it at Costco. You know, we were going through Costco just shopping the other day, and $4.99 for this package, the Osmo Pocket 3 Capture More combo. Now, I looked on B&H, and I didn't see this on B&H, the Capture More combo. So I think it's a Costco, I think it might be a Costco only thing. So it has the camera, it has the big handle battery, and it has the little tripod, and it has a memory card also. So that's kind of cool. I mean, for $4.99, let me get your comment off here. Okay, for $4.99, this I think even the basic kits that don't come with that much, I see the cheapest I see is like $5.19. So I have unpackaged DJI drones before. Obviously, we all use those. But I never have the, we'll see what the packaging is like, whether it's Apple-like. This is like their drones here. So you've got a sticker. They'd probably say like toolless packaging, but no, I have a tool here. See, and here's the other thing too. I hate packaging. That's why I like Apple products, actually. Ooh, look at that. See? All right, I'm starting to get some hope in this thing now. Like, this is very Apple-like, don't you think? Look, it's got, what is this? Oh, this is the battery. Is that what that is? Yeah, battery handle. And here's the actual camera. Do not eat. Hey, Real Steel. What does that say right there? I don't know if you read that language or not. I just know you're in Asia somewhere, and you've got like a bright red beard, so obviously aren't from there. Mini tripod. And then a 64 gig. Oh, it's a micro with an adapter. Oh, so this must be micro, and then it comes with an adapter. How fast is it? V30, slowish, but still for $4.99, you know. All right, let's see if it comes with any charge. I'm gonna try to follow directions. Oh, look. See if you do it the way it says. It's actually really easy. You just peel it in the direction it says to peel it. And there's the camera. It's probably like cables and such. Spam. Osmo Pocket 3 protective. Oh, this is like a thing just to show you how like a condom works or something. I obviously don't know how those work because I have 3 kids. They're like a sticker. I hate stickers. Like, I don't do advertising, you know. I bought the thing. Light Cut app. DJI recommended videoing app. No thanks. Quick start guide. All this stuff. See, this is why Ocean has like Uber trash patch. All right. Okay. Okay. Peel. Looks at ASMR. English. Activate before. Oh man, it won't let me just use it. It wants me to do like an app. Yo, how cool is that though? I'm gonna have fun with this thing. How do I put it back and not? How does it go back and not hit that? Okay. It's still a $500 camera. What do you expect? And all this other stuff. I'll do that later. So, anyway, but yeah, you know, $4.99 at Costco for all that. Oh, this is the tripod thingy. So. Okay, let's see. Where am I at here? For 10K, I'm going for KX. R5C2 in C80 body with EVF with a few ergonomic photo changes done like dinner. Yeah, but do you think they'll do that? I mean, that would... Why would you buy... Well, yeah, you'd still buy the C80 for like the NDs. The NDs and the audio on the R5C is abysmal. It's awful. You know, that 3.5 millimeter jack, like, you have to get that Tascam unit to get any clean audio in the R5C. I'm convinced of that these days, you know. But yeah, maybe. Just done like dinner. Okay, wow, that's a good deal. The Osmo 3 is a good vlog setup. You know what? That seems to be the consensus. You know, everybody I know that has one of these really likes it. And these are people who are like, a lot of them are pretty discerning. They still really like the, you know, this little DJI thing. So I want to use it. I want to use it not as a professional. So, and here's the thing too, like, right. So a lot of you know, the other one that I got recently is the Leica Q3 43. And it's like that too. You know, I want to use the Leica Q3 43 as the world's most expensive point and shoot camera, because that's kind of what it is. And I want to use the Osmo Pocket kind of like that too. You know, I don't want to go deep in the menus. I don't want to squeeze out the most dynamic range out of the thing that I can get. I don't want to, you know, grade a bunch of logs. I was like, I just kind of want to like go for it, you know, just whip it out and be creative. So like I have cameras that I try to squeeze out everything from, and I grade to oblivion. Like I have that. This I want to kind of just have fun with, you know, have fun with and just be creative with and make content with. Hopefully it'll inspire me to make some more content. You know, because I've been kind of burned out for the past couple of years, but the people I know that have these things, that's one of the things that they all say about it, you know, is it does inspire them just to kind of, because it's so easy, so small, easy, light, you can put it in your pocket, you know, and you whip it out and just make content wherever, in a way that, I mean, I guess your phone does that too, but kind of in a way, I guess, that inspires you to make more content. So anyway, how long have we been going? We're going 52 minutes. So it's awesome to see you guys around here. So let me know, hit like before you leave, if you would. And a couple of you I haven't seen before. Live music. Haven't seen you before. You need to subscribe too, brother. The rest of you, I think, are subscribed. And, you know, let me know if this is something that you guys like, kind of these late night live stream things. I mean, it's a bit unorthodox. A lot of people are live streaming, you know, during the daytime hours. But like I said, you know, I've got 3 young kids. They're in bed right now. And this, a lot of the time, is a good time for me to do this. Kind of wind down from the day, you know. Let's see. King Kruk, I'm considering Hassie X2D. Yeah, me too. For fun photography. I understand what you mean. Yeah, that's, you know, what's funny is I am too, but not as much now as before I got that Leica. So that Leica kind of scratched that itch. And that's the way that one of the ways I justify the Leica to myself is like, all right, next 2D is like even way more money than that thing, you know? So, so I'll get this and it'll keep me out of the Hasselblad for a while. Plus, I'm not like 1,000% sold that the X2D is, worth the money. Yeah, I'm really not. I mean, the more that I research the X2D and compare it against the Fuji system and take a look at images from each and hear the stories, you know, and there are plenty of horror stories about Hasselblad and their servicing and this and that, lens mounts being loose and the newer XCD lenses, the compact ones, perhaps being produced in China as a byproduct of DJI now owning Hasselblad. I'm not 1,000% sold on. I mean, X2Ds are like $8,000 just for the body, right? And then all those lenses are several thousand a piece. I think the Fuji might be a better play. It's not as sexy. I mean, not by a long shot as the Hasselblad, right? I mean, the Fuji's downright homely compared to the X2D. But is it a better play? It might be. It might be. Fuji's a very known quantity, and they've been doing it for a long time too. So, what deals are you looking for holiday deals? I don't really think I am. So I mean, okay, and part of that, I'll try not to make this a long answer. Part of that is, you know, since this is what I do for a living, around this time of year, like Q4, is when all of my numbers start coalescing into the picture of what it is for this year. And so some years it's like, I'm going to go spend some money. And other years it's like, nah, I got it this year. You know, I mean, I've got enough deductions and, you know, I still need to be making a profit, you know, and all this kind of stuff. That's kind of where I am this year is I kind of got this covered. You know, I bought a really expensive truck in 2023, which I can depreciate over however long my accountant says. You know, and I've got, you know, so I've got that deduction carrying forward a lot of it. And the gear that I have bought this year, you know, like the Leica, and I've bought some RF lenses, and I bought a KX, I think, this year. Was that this year? But, you know, it's like I've bought a lot of gear this year too. So and I think I'm pretty good. But to answer your question, because I don't want to not give you an answer, I'm looking for commodity stuff to be on sale. The stuff that you kind of just need, you know, like cleaning kits, you know, memory cards, things like that, cables, you know, of some variety. You know, just kind of consumable things, you know, things that don't last forever, and tools. You know, I like tools. You know, so like knives and screwdrivers and Allen sets and stuff like that. But I kind of have everything that I need. I think the only really thing for my RF system that I want to get is a good macro lens. And so maybe if they fire sale that 100mm macro, I mean, they always have it on like light sale, you know, like a couple hundred off or whatever. If they fire sale that thing, I'll buy one, you know, or I might buy another, like an EF macro or something, because that's not a lens that I'm going to use often, and I can always adapt it, and that's fine. You know, lens I'm going to use often, I want it to be native, but with macro, it doesn't really matter that much. Jumped on because it's mid-afternoon here. Happy to jump on the stream whenever I can, but often have to settle for the replay. Yes, but can you read? Where did that do not eat go? The most important question is, whoop, here, will you focus? Focus. What does that say? Does it say the same thing it says in English on top? Anyway, I'm just messing with you. So yeah, I'm kind of stoked on this thing, on the Osmo. You know, so we'll see how that goes. So anyway, thanks y'all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that annoying YouTuber stuff, and I'll see you. Peace.